Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 1067, Chapter Mamis. The truth, at last, stood revealed beneath the shroud of blood and shadow. All threads had converged, every hidden scheme laid bare. The pieces of the puzzle fit together with chilling precision. And yet, even with clarity, the danger had not diminished in the slightest. If anything, it had only grown more suffocating. Ling Han stood amidst the chaos, his heart weighed down like iron. The blood sacrifice had not been stopped. The Chang clan's ritual continued, relentless and unstoppable, advancing step by step toward its dreadful culmination. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, the Eternity Sky Emperor himself would descend upon this place to retrieve the Nine Demons' Sword, a god tool of at least level 13. Even in its incomplete state, even buried and suppressed for countless ages, its power was already terrifying beyond comprehension. If it were to truly unleash its might, slaying a heavenly body tier elite would be no more difficult than crushing an ant beneath one's heel. Once it fell into the hands of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, the fate of the entire joint peace planet would be sealed. No force would be able to oppose them. No voice would dare rise in defiance. Only then did Ling Han fully understand why the Chang clan had dared to carry out such a mad, large-scale blood sacrifice. Once the Nine Demons' Sword was theirs, they would be invincible. At that point, what did the judgment of the world matter? What did righteousness or morality amount to in the face of absolute power? A faint unease flickered in Ling Han's eyes. For all his intelligence, for all his experience, he found himself cornered, helpless. Now, the Nine Flames' Heavenly King stood guard outside. If he stepped out, it would not be a battle. It would be certain death. There would be no second outcome. My only hope lies with Empress Luanxing and the Absolute Beginning Stone. Ling Han's thoughts surged like a storm. That ancient stone could absorb all attacks, even withstand the force of a divine sword on the level of the Eternal River tier. But it was far too small, its protection limited. It could not shield everything. In a true confrontation, even Empress Luanxing would be placed at a severe disadvantage. What should I do? His mind raced, calculations unfolding and collapsing in rapid succession. Yet before absolute power, all schemes seemed pale and meaningless. No matter what plan he devised, the Nine Flames' Heavenly King would only need a single palm strike, and everything would end. Time passed like flowing water. The blood sacrifice did not cease. Countless lives were consumed, their vitality drawn into the altar like rivers pouring into the abyss. The violent aura of the Nine Demons' Sword was slowly being worn down, stripped away piece by piece. By the second day, the change was unmistakable. The altar itself had become saturated with an overwhelming aura of violence. But this was no sign of danger fading. Rather, it was the herald of completion. The violent aura within the Nine Demons' Sword had been forced out, and like a blazing flame before extinguishment, it now surged to its peak. Ah! A terrifying transformation began. From within the blood lake, streaks of sword light erupted into the sky. Each ray was like a bolt of divine judgment, slicing through space with unstoppable force. The prison cells within the altar shattered like brittle glass under their onslaught. Wherever the sword light passed, flesh and blood were torn apart. No mercy, no survivors. The power contained within each strike had already reached the level of the heavenly body tier. The prisoners, whose cultivation had long been sealed, were helpless. Even the guards, cultivators of formidable strength, could not withstand a single blow. To be struck by that sword light was to be annihilated, body shattered, existence erased without leaving even a complete corpse behind. And yet, amidst this carnage, the Nine Flames' Heavenly King did not show fear. Instead, his laughter rang out like thunder. As expected of our ancestor's spirit tool, he roared, his voice filled with exhilaration. Such power, truly magnificent. His eyes gleamed with greed and pride. It has yet to awaken. Only the sword hilt remains, and still it possesses such terrifying might. Once we retrieve it, its strength will reach at least the pseudo-eternal river tier. And when we reforge it with the remaining parts, even slaying a low-level eternal river tier elite will not be difficult. In his excitement, secrets spilled from his lips. The truth became clearer. The Nine Demons' Sword was incomplete. It had been shattered into multiple fragments. What lay buried here was merely the hilt. And more terrifying still, the Chang clan had already uncovered the locations of the remaining fragments. which meant this altar was not unique. Linghan's heart pounded violently in his chest. If the Eternity Sky Emperor had already gathered the other fragments, then his power would have soared to unimaginable heights. Even now, with only the hilt, he was already poised to dominate the Joint Peace Planet. Sword light surged with increasing frequency. The air trembled, the heavens quaked. Even the Nine Flames' Heavenly King no longer lingered within the altar, not because he could not endure the attacks, but because there was no need. To remain would only waste his strength. Soon, the altar itself would collapse under the rampaging power of the sword. And as for Linghan, if he were still within, there would be no possibility of survival. Unless he defied all logic, Hong Hong. At last, the towering altar, once as imposing as a mountain, crumbled. Stone shattered. Dust filled the sky. What remained was nothing but ruin. And yet, the sword light did not cease. It shot skyward in unending torrents, tearing through the very heavens, leaving fractures in the firmament itself. This was the moment of peak violence. The nine-demon sword had reached its most unstable, most ferocious state. Then, shoo! From the distant horizon, a figure streaked across the sky. His presence descended like a falling star. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his bearing majestic. A crimson cloak billowed behind him like a river of blood, dancing wildly in the wind. Behind his back floated 9 spheres of black light. They were not flames. They were darker than darkness itself, cold, eerie, unfathomable. Imperial brother? The Nine Flames' Heavenly King hurried forward, his voice filled with respect. The man who had arrived was none other than the Eternity Sky Emperor, one of the 3 supreme overlords of the Joint Peace Planet. A chaotic aura surrounded his body, obscuring his features. His face seemed to shift constantly, never settling into a single form. And yet, anyone who saw him would never forget him. Such was his presence, unique, unmistakable, just like Empress Luan Xing. Though few had ever seen her true appearance, none would mistake her for another. The Eternity Sky Emperor came to a halt. His towering figure stood between heaven and earth, as though he alone upheld the sky. Before him, the world seemed small, insignificant. His gaze swept across the ruins. "Very good," he said calmly. "The violent aura within the 9-demon sword has been completely expelled." His voice carried the weight of authority. "This is the ancestral spirit tool of our Chang clan. It shares an inseparable bond with our bloodline. Soon, I shall employ a secret technique to retrieve it. Success is all but certain." "Congratulations, Imperial brother." The Nine Flames' Heavenly King laughed loudly. "The sword hilt is the easiest to recover. In the future, when we gather the remaining 3 segments of the blade, our ancestral weapon will shine once more with its supreme brilliance." Then his tone turned cautious. "But, Imperial brother, the 9-demon sword has been buried for millions of years. It is a weapon of extreme ferocity. Even though we share a bloodline connection, you must not be careless." The Eternity Sky Emperor threw his head back and laughed. "Of course, I know." Pride surged within him. "When I obtain the 9-demon sword, I will sweep aside the Jade Drop Majestic Empire and conquer the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire." His eyes burned with ambition. "And then I shall take Empress Luanxing into my imperial harem." So that was his true desire. For all his grand ambitions, to unify the world, to conquer empires, at his core, he longed for Empress Luanxing. Even a ruler of his stature was captivated by her. Such was her charm. Linghan's lips twitched as he cursed inwardly. A bastard dreaming of courting death, yet he could do nothing. Nothing at all. That helplessness gnawed at him like poison. "Hey, the feud between us and the Jade Drop Majestic Empire will finally come to an end." The Nine Flames' Heavenly King sneered, murderous intent radiating from his body. "That's right." The Eternity Sky Emperor replied coldly, killing intent blazing in his eyes. The air grew heavy. Sword light filled the sky, endless and boundless. The violent aura condensed, then dispersed, again and again. At last, it reached its peak. From the surging energy, a colossal humanoid figure took shape. It loomed over the battlefield, its presence suffocating, its gaze locked upon the Eternity Sky Emperor and the Nine Flames' Heavenly King. "Imperial brother," the Nine Flames' Heavenly King declared boldly, stepping forward, "leave this to me. You go and retrieve the 9-demon sword." "All right," the Eternity Sky Emperor replied without hesitation. He raised his hand. A single palm descended. Origin power surged, forming a massive hand the size of a mountain. It crashed down upon the ruins of the altar, tearing into the earth, digging through layers of soil. At that very moment, the colossal humanoid aura roared silently. Its fist descended. A strike filled with terrifying divine sense power surged forward. Your opponent is me. The Nine Flames Heavenly King soared into the sky, intercepting the attack head-on. The clash was about to begin. The winds of chaos had yet to settle, and beneath the trembling heavens, the tension grew ever heavier. Let's take advantage of this moment. Let's leave at once, the small dog urged, its voice edged with urgency, as if even lingering another breath would invite calamity. But Ling Han did not move. His gaze remained fixed upon the distant battlefield, calm yet sharp like a blade concealed within still water. He slowly shook his head. No, we stay and watch. I want to see just how terrifying this nine-demon sword truly is. Not far away, the Eternity Sky Emperor continued to dig into the earth with relentless force, his movements steady and unwavering, as if nothing in this world could distract him from his purpose. For the moment, no upheaval arose from his actions. But in the heavens above, destruction had already begun to unfold. The Nine Flames, Heavenly King, was locked in a brutal clash against a towering figure of condensed aura, a monstrous humanoid stretching hundreds of meters into the sky. Its form was not flesh, but a manifestation of pure violence and bloodlust, its presence alone enough to chill the marrow of any cultivator, even thousands. No, tens of thousands of Sun Moon tier elites would be reduced to nothingness in a single instant under one sweep of its spiritual attack. Faced with such a being, even a figure like the Nine Flames Heavenly King dared not show the slightest carelessness. Flames erupted across his body, surging like divine fire descending from the heavens. In that moment, he was no longer merely a cultivator. He was a sovereign of flames, a living inferno, a god of fire walking upon the mortal plane. His title was no empty boast. 9 flames, 9 colors, 9 manifestations of power. The faintest was white, the beginning of his strength. The deepest, black, signified the unleashing of his absolute might, a force so burdensome that even he could not sustain it for long. At present, green flames coiled around his form, his 5th level of power. This alone declared that he regarded this monstrous aura as a worthy enemy. Yet time passed and the pressure mounted. Soon, blue flames ignited. The 6th level. The battle had already escalated. The towering aura figure possessed no vital point. It had no heart, no core, only endless violence given form. Even when struck by attacks far exceeding its own level, it merely dissolved into mist before reforming anew. An immortal manifestation of slaughter. But its true terror lay not in its resilience, rather in its spiritual assault. Invisible waves lashed out like silent blades, capable of annihilating even a heavenly body tier elite if the slightest lapse occurred. Thus, the Nine Flames Heavenly King cloaked himself in divine fire, using the flames not only to attack, but to shield, to refine, to resist the relentless spiritual assaults crashing against him. This was not merely a clash of strength. This was a battle of will, a collision of martial intent. Fortunately, the Aura Beast was but a byproduct, a residue of power leaking from a divine weapon buried deep below. It was not alive. It had limits. But the Nine Flames Heavenly King was different. He was flesh and blood. He possessed an unending wellspring of power. As long as he held his ground, as long as his will did not falter, victory would eventually be his. Below, the earth groaned. Boom, boom! The Eternity Sky Emperor's strikes resounded like thunder as he tore open the ground layer by layer. Where once an altar had stood, now there yawned a vast, bottomless pit. By all logic, the deeper he dug, the more intense the aura of violence should become, like descending into a furnace of killing intent. Yet strangely, there was nothing. The deeper he went, the calmer it became. It was as if the very thing he sought was hiding beneath a veil of perfect stillness. Then, shua! A brilliant sword light erupted from the depths, tearing upward like the birth of a sun. In an instant, heaven and earth were flooded with blinding radiance. The world itself seemed to pale before its brilliance. "It has appeared!" The Eternity Sky Emperor roared, his eyes blazing with triumph. He thrust out his hand. Origin power surged, condensing into a massive palm that reached toward the heavens. With a sharp motion, pa! The radiant sword light was crushed, extinguished by sheer force. Light faded. The world returned, and from the depths, something rose, a sword. No, only a fragment of one, a broken blade. Its hilt remained, but its blade was shattered, less than 1/8 its original length. By all appearances, it seemed unremarkable, almost pitiful. Yet the moment it emerged, an overwhelming aura swept across the world. Dominance, authority, the presence of something supreme. It was as though an unparalleled ruler had descended upon the land, forcing all beings to bow in submission. Even heavenly body-tier elites. Before this broken sword, they were no different from ordinary mortals. The Eternity Sky Emperor's face lit with elation. Without hesitation, he raised his right hand, drawing 2 fingers together like a blade. With a swift motion, he sliced across his own wrist. Blood flowed. Each drop shimmered like a jewel, dense, radiant, brimming with unimaginable vitality. This was no ordinary blood. It was divine essence. To a mountain river tier cultivator, even a single drop could elevate cultivation by leaps and bounds, an entire sub-minor level gained with ease. But such power came at a cost. To those unworthy, it would mean instant destruction, their bodies unable to withstand its potency. 9 Demon Sword, the Eternity Sky Emperor called out, his voice echoing across the heavens. You were forged as the ancestral weapon of the Chang clan. I stand before you now. Return to your rightful lineage. With a sweeping motion, he cast his blood forth. Each drop transformed midair, swelling into vast mountains of crimson power that crashed down upon the sword. The 9 Demon Sword did not resist. Instead, it seemed to respond. As if drawn by instinct, as if awakened by the scent of familiar blood, the crimson tide enveloped it completely. The Eternity Sky Emperor's eyes gleamed with anticipation. Once the bloodline resonance was established, once the connection was formed, this divine weapon would be his. And then it happened. In a single instant, every drop of blood vanished, absorbed, consumed. The broken sword trembled faintly. Light began to flicker along its shattered edge, pulsing, breathing, alive. It floated quietly in the air. Calm, contained, had it submitted? Ling Han's fists tightened. His gaze sharpened, a storm brewing behind his calm exterior. If the Eternity Sky Emperor obtained this sword, who in this world could stand against him? Would anyone remain capable of opposing his will? The Eternity Sky Emperor laughed, his voice echoing like thunder. He stepped forward, closing the distance in an instant, his hand reaching out toward the sword's hilt. For others, such an act would be suicide. Even peak heavenly body tier elites would be annihilated by its power. But he was different. The blood of the Chang clan flowed through him, the very same lineage that had birthed this weapon. He was its rightful master. His fingers touched the hilt. His smile widened. And then, the world changed. The sword trembled violently. A flash of light erupted. A blade of impossible size, thousands of meters long, formed in an instant and slashed downward toward him. The attack came without warning, without hesitation, without mercy. But the Eternity Sky Emperor was no fool. He had long anticipated the sword's ferocity. His hands transformed into claws, crashing down upon the incoming blade of light. The collision shook the heavens. Pooh! The claws shattered instantly. The sword light swept past, unstoppable. The Eternity Sky Emperor groaned as his body was hurled back, retreating a full 100 miles before regaining control. When he raised his hands, blood marked his palms. Though his conjured claws had been destroyed, the true danger lay in the sword's violent aura. Its sword chi surged forward relentlessly, cutting into his very being. And yet, he laughed with wild exhilaration. This is the 9 Demon Sword I have been waiting for, he declared. Only such power could satisfy him. Only such ferocity could grant him the strength to crush his enemies, the Jade Drop Emperor and Empress Luan Xing. The sword answered with silence, but its actions spoke clearly. Shua! 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 Wave after wave of sword light erupted, relentless, merciless. Even the Eternity Sky Emperor found himself suppressed, forced onto the defensive. Yet his laughter only grew louder. So powerful, even while restrained by bloodline suppression, he roared. Then in my hands, what heights will you reach? His voice thundered with arrogance and destiny. I am the son of heaven, chosen by fate. I am of the Chang clan, your master by right. But the sword cared nothing for such claims. It was a weapon of slaughter, a blade born for blood. Lineage meant nothing. Only killing, only fresh blood. That was its desire. With a surge of power, the Eternity Sky Emperor unleashed his full might, 4 heavenly bodies manifested behind him. Chaotic energy roared forth like a primordial storm. The heavens trembled. The earth fractured. Light and power intertwined, tearing reality itself. Linghan could no longer see clearly. The battlefield became a storm of destruction, waves of force crashing outward, shattering land and sky alike. Even within the Black Tower, he was tossed about like dust in a tempest, carried along by the violent upheaval. Then, through the chaos, he saw it. The Eternity Sky Emperor had transformed. A colossal figure, thousands of meters tall. 9 blazing orbs revolved around him like stars, forming a radiant ring of power in his grasp, a weapon forged from the cosmos itself. Then, a sharp sound split the air. Something flew upward. A severed arm. It spun through the sky before crashing back down, blood scattering like crimson rain. And in that moment, a chilling truth emerged. The 9 demons' sword did not have an arm.